Welcome to Go-to-Market Navigator by Capital. This is our ongoing series where we break down the essential components to nailing the right go-to-market strategy. My name is Lauren Houpt, and I am an operating value associate here at Capital. Today, we're joined by Jonathan Geller. He is the founder of Glider, and we're super excited to have a conversation around the best practices to nailing all your discovery calls. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to it. Well, Jonathan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our Go-to-Market Navigator. We're really excited to talk about nailing your discovery calls today. Can you just kind of start off with your background, your previous experience, so the audience kind of knows where you're coming from?
So thanks so much for having me, Lauren. To share a little bit about myself, I've been a founding sales hire 3 different times in my career. So climbed the ladder from AE to sales leader. 2 companies I've worked with were pretty much pre-revenue and went on to be acquired by big publicly traded technology companies. One of them was Vimeo. The company that they purchased was called Wibbits. Another was Stror Media, a German-based research company. That company that Stror Media purchased was called Statista. So led these companies in revenue. I scaled one from a team of 6 to 200. I joined the other, Statista, as the fifth US hire. That company's a global team of 1,300 staff. So sales is absolutely in my blood. I've spent 35 years, or rather, my father spent 35 years selling wholesale paper goods door to door in Brooklyn, New York to restaurants. I did that as well. Fast forward, I've closed 32 million bucks in revenue over the past decade for VC-backed startups, including multi-million-dollar deals with the likes of IBM. So the reality is, I know what it takes to build traction in the early stage, and that's my edge based off of these real experiences. Love the process. Ready to roll up my sleeves and drive results for my clients. And honestly, I find that there's nothing better than closing deals for the early stage and showing that there's life and blood in the early stage. So my mission for my company and my team is to help jumpstart sales for B2B SaaS companies with a focus on pre-seed, seed, and Series A, with a focus on $0 to $5 million.
Awesome. Thank you. That's super helpful. I think it gives kind of our viewers a great context as well into this conversation. But I guess to really launch things off, would love to hear your approach going into a discovery call. I think discovery calls can often be intimidating, especially if you're a one-person sales team. What are your kind of tips and tricks on how to prep in advance?
Yeah, so I'd say first off, Lauren, the idea is to help them and to kind of give first and to build a relationship. Obviously, you have a product, software, good service to provide, but let's kind of like diagnose the situation, learn about them, seek to understand before being understood. A lot of founders, they're incredibly proud. They have an amazing software. They're able to raise meaningful money from a VC like yourself. So they're really kind of chomping at the bit to share the latest and greatest and kind of show off the goods of their product. Take a quick step back. Discovery is incredibly important. It's not a cute process to just kind of like build a rapport. It's truly there to learn. So, first off, as far as preparation going into a discovery call, I'd say review their LinkedIn page, of course, their tenure, their background, their scope. If it's a founder, pretty obvious, right? If it's somebody else, you kind of want to learn about their world. I'd say be prepared to take a ton of notes. I kind of reminded myself, Lauren has 110 early stage seed and Series A companies. You have 10 Series B, 2 pre-IPO companies. Wow, Jonathan actually listened to me the first conversation we had. Good for him. I can trust him. He listens to me at least a little bit. He's not like everybody else. So a little further, company Crunchbase, company site, of course. How large is their team? Kind of gives you some sense of like how much money they're working with to some extent. What does the company do? What's their value proposition? You're speaking to somebody that lives and breathes this stuff. Learn about that, right? Mutual connections, of course, all notes from previous conversations if this is your second conversation. Then prepare case studies as far as like we have certain wins in fintech, we have certain wins in construction tech, whatever it may be. And then again, just to kind of rehash, the mindset and the overarching goal, Lauren, is to seek to understand before being understood, right? When people feel heard, they're calmer. When you kind of get them to stop thinking you're out to get them, they're more inclined to trust, obviously, to tell you something you didn't know. And, now you know something you didn't know, and you're kind of at least you're putting yourself in the ring to extract more information from them. You're not really there to agree, you're there to kind of understand their flow. Um, So that's kind of going into a discovery call. I will say, kind of as a quick add-on, if it's a second conversation, and how do you go into a second conversation? I really always kind of like to start with information that to kind of level set. And even if I spoke to Lauren yesterday and I want to share information, just to kind of like share information of kind of like a what we know type of thing, right? So if I can articulate um, my buyer's challenge, it's a good quote that I share all the time. If you can articulate your buyer's challenge as well or better than they can, they'll automatically assume you have the right solution. I believe it was Chris Arloff who said that, who's excellent. So yeah, worth noting.
Totally. Yep. I totally agree on the trust part, for sure. So glad you nailed that one in. And I guess kind of a great segue into another question is how do you structure your discovery calls, specifically from open all the way to close?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, this sounds incredibly cheesy. My younger self thinks this is probably, corny and not necessary, but setting an agenda is super important. In fact, Gong has a statistic: calls with a clear agenda are 2.3 times more likely to close than calls without an agenda. So, what do I mean by an agenda? Hey, Lauren, that just to kind of level set, I always like to ask if it's okay to set an agenda, and then to kind of basically get Lauren's blessings as far as like what the agenda may be, and then mind if we talk through the agenda? Here's what I have in mind. No idea if this is a fit. This may be a perfect fit. We may be able to move mountains together. I may not be able to help at all, but we're here to learn, right? And the best way to accomplish that is to talk through your current sales process, your current gaps, kind of like biggest challenges, some goals that you have for Q3, Q4. Hey, Lauren, does that feel like a fair way to approach the call? And then you're kind of coming to the conversation, Lauren. He's not out to get me. He's respectful of my time. He asked me if I have, the next 40 minutes, the next 20 minutes to speak, which I should have asked. And we're off to the races. And I'm kind of an open book here. Again, this is really to kind of like understand if Jonathan can help me or not. So I'd say quick agenda, 2 minutes on that. Calls with a clear agenda are 2.3 times more likely to close. Spend 10 plus minutes on a discovery conversation. Um, which means again all things which we'll get into in the next question into the next question here. um, their situation, their pain, their impact of that pain, what's a critical event that we need to be mindful of, what's a decision criteria, so on and so forth. And then be very aware, they could probably, some founders are very proud, or some whoever you're speaking to are very proud and they could go off on a tangent, but you do want to leave the last 5-10 minutes of this 30-minute conversation, right? So typically the discovery is about 30 minutes, into kind of like quote unquote sell mode, and to kind of share the goods as well. It doesn't need to be more than 5-10 minutes. You could save that for call two, but that's really important here, where if you kind of get caught up in a 30-minute discovery, that might be par for the course. And for the larger 50K plus deals, you may want to spend that entire 25 minutes after the agenda going into the discovery. But you do want to kind of show some form of value to get them hooked and to get them onto the next conversation. So just to kind of recap, 2-3 minutes on the agenda, 10 plus 15 minutes on discovery. If the deal size is less than 25K, I'd say to share the price. Some semblance of the price would be one way to do that. And then next steps, let's talk about the pricing as a caveat. And then next steps, to kind of land another conversation later in the week or later or the next day.
Awesome. Yeah. I will say, like, as someone that talks to a lot of sales folks, I love when people enter the call and they say, "Hey, do you have this much time?" Because sometimes there's a hard stop. Sometimes people can go over. So I always it makes a big difference when people kind of join calls that way. So I'm really glad you called that out. Perfect.
Yeah,
And then
all about being
yes,
respectful of their time. Yeah.
totally. And it goes back to that trust piece as well, which trust and respect go hand in hand for sure. And I know you alluded to this, but next question, which I think will really get into kind of the meat and bones here, but what are the most important questions you aim to get answered during your discovery call? I think that's a tough one for founders to kind of nail down.
Yeah, totally. So the most important questions, obviously, different um, softwares are going to kind of like breed different types of questions, right? But I'd say, I run the spiced methodology. none of it is necessarily kind of like rocket science, but you do want to kind of make sure you extract this information from your prospect, right? So first thing, spice is the situation. Learn about their current world, right? How big is their team? What are they looking to solve? Some of their goals, right? Who's involved? Their situation, simple enough, their world, right? Try to extract that information from them. Then their pain. What are some of their challenges? Not only what are some of their challenges, but what are some of their challenges, Lauren, that you'd regret not solving 3 months from now, 6 months from now? It kind of puts it a little bit of a timestamp on, hey, this is a pain for me. Cool. When does that need to be solved for? Right. And then you could kind of peel back the onion a little bit. What's the um, financial impact of that pain? Well, what happens if we don't absolve for this pain in the next 3 months? How much time are you spending on this? How much time are your team or your teammates spending on this, right? What's your take on what's causing these issues? And why is it not clicking? So that's really kind of like the need behind the need to some extent, which I think are really, really important because you're going to give me some information, but it's really important you kind of peel back the onion and you understand from the prospect's world what's going on in the business that's causing these issues, what's going on in the business that's driving this to be a priority now. Because if it's not a priority now, no worries, and it's important I know that. So I might even ask, "Hey, Lauren, where are these challenges on your like priority scale?" You know what, Jonathan? They're a pain in my butt, but they're actually not that important. Okay, so when I follow up 2 months from now, and Lauren's pretty slow to respond, surprise, surprise, she told me that these aren't really all that important and don't need to be fixed over the next 3 to 6 months. So I need to listen to that and kind of follow that, as opposed to knocking on your door over and over because you kind of gave me your world where like it's important but not so much. Now, on the flip side, this is where you really open up. What's going on in the business, Jonathan, that's driving me to prioritize this now? Well, my founder is upset about this, and my VP's talking about that, and we have a goal to hit, this revenue in the next 6 months. If I don't, then I'm going to look like an idiot in front of my team next time I present. That's the need behind the need. And now I'm hearing from Lauren's own words share that like these are the ramifications this challenge is having on me. And oh yeah, more broadly across the business. So if I'm a marketing, company, my top of funnel is low and I need to report back to my head of sales and CEO and founder and chairman, top of funnel is going to be low, right? So I think that's a really important kind of like couple of questions that kind of really get the need behind the need, right? And then you also want to share what's the impact if you don't hit these numbers. Also, again, kind of like the cost of inaction. So that would be the pain. Then it's the impact. So what's the financial impact of that pain? And then the last two, the C and the E of the SPICE criteria is the critical event. And then lastly is the decision criteria. So the critical event is, Lauren, okay, I understand your pain. I understand the financial impact of that pain. But when does this need to be solved for? Critical event, right? When do these decisions typically take place? Lauren, it seems as if you've probably done this a hundred times before, right? How does this typically work as far as who's involved and when? Oh, you know what, Jonathan, our fiscal year is kind of weird and it ends at the end of January as opposed to end of December. These are the things that as a seller, especially as an enterprise seller, you really want to learn. Otherwise, you're kind of, hey, Lauren, what's the latest? What's the latest? As opposed to really understanding when these decisions are typically kind of accounted for, right? So, for example, if I know Lauren makes these decisions by, needs to fit this into the budget by December 31, I need to kind of get an answer from Lauren by the end of October because she told me that legal takes 6 weeks or that we need to run through procurement for 2 weeks. So for us to have a decision by December 15th in order to get 50K out of you up front, which is kind of like traditional SaaS, which is what we're charging for, or which is what we're striving for here, then I want to kind of know that plan and kind of map that out with you together, not against you, but kind of collaborate on that. So these are the things that very, very important you extract from conversation number one. And then lastly is the decision criteria, right? So Lauren touches base with Jonathan, shares the scope of work with Jonathan, who's kind of a decision maker, for example, but then Jonathan needs to kind of get the blessings from Lauren and kind of learn how that navigation process looks like through thick and thin. And you kind of want to, again, extract that information off the bat.
1,000% no, and thanks for adding some additional flavor to that as well. And I think that kind of leads nicely into our next question. So we've talked about how do you gather information, what questions should you try to get answered during these discovery calls, but how do you balance, getting information with also building rapport on the call? Curious your thoughts there, because there's a lot of EQ that goes into this too.
Yeah, no, totally, 100%. I mean, you're very, very rarely gonna sell anything without the rapport being solid and the trust being strong, right? So you don't need me to share that with you, but it comes from being a good listener, comes from close attention, it comes from seeking to understand before being understood. It's always a balance. You're here to be a partner, but also show that you're going to make them look like a star and make their world a little bit easier and make their team's world a little bit easier and help them grow their business, right? They also need to like you, sure, but you also need to kind of like, show value, show that you've done this a million times before. Even in the early stage, it's only a couple of times before, right? Maybe you have a couple of pilots, maybe you have a couple of trials going, but you need to show that like this is kind of something that, you know, has worked before. We have proud investors. I'm a proud founder, and people feel, above all, people feel connected when they feel understood, not just kind of like chatted up. Um, so a little further, how else would I balance gathering information versus building rapport? You know, show Yeah, I'd say those are kind of like a handful of different things that I would focus on. Obviously, being an expert in your field, being an expert in your own business and your own product, but also in their world as well. And it kind of goes back to, if you can articulate your buyer's challenges as well or better than they can, they'll automatically assume you have the right solution for them.
For sure, for sure. Totally agree there. Awesome. Well, I know that we did also touch a little bit, on how important it is to understand pain points and the challenges that your potential buyer is facing. And sometimes it can be a little cagey. It can be a little bit awkward. And how do you? What are some techniques that you use or that you've seen work really well in uncovering those pain points when the prospect might be a little bit unwilling to uncover those?
Yeah, I'd say, some quick techniques that I like to um, share a little bit is, it's okay to, on one hand, be wrong. But I say that to say you're allowed to make some assumptions. So even if I'm incorrect, try and take, a couple of stabs at what may be their problems and challenges in their world and let them correct you, right? You're not here to know their business better than them, but, people feel empowered when they actually correct people. So if I share with Lauren, hey, it seems as if this may be a challenge, that's okay. She may feel empowered by defying me, and then what you're doing is really opening up um her to kind of sharing a little bit more about her world, right? So Chris Voss, he's an amazing author. He has an awesome book that I love and recommend. He says, make assumptions, and it's totally okay. Kind of get the other side to say no, right? Because if I could get Lauren to say no, she's more inclined to feel strong and empowered and actually share more insights with me. And that's kind of like my job here, certainly in the discovery, where if I could extract information from Lauren, I'm that much more better off that when I do get to demo mode, sharing a solution that fits the need for Lauren, right? So that would be one kind of like, I guess, tactic and kind of like a little bit of sales psychology that kind of helps you extract more information. I'd say, as opposed to asking kind of like why questions, well, why are you doing this, Lauren? I'm not going to get very far. Why? Because Lauren's going to share probably like a 1-2 word answer of why she did that, and she's actually going to feel accused. Whereas if I share something a little bit more open ended and I say, "Hey, Lauren, can you walk me through this or tell me more about that?" and kind of like the what and how questions, you're that much more inclined to kind of again share more of your world with me, all in the realm of me just trying to get a little bit more information. Where again, if I go to the why questions, you're going to be, whoa, who is this person? I'm 10
Right.
minutes into the conversation. Why is he talking about why? So, or why is he asking me why I did this or why I did that? So, what and how questions are really good. Walk me through this. Can you tell me more? And then, when you get to the point of, for example, for myself, if I want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of, how much a company has in runway. It's a little bit more sensitive. Maybe they don't want to share that information with somebody inside an hour of conversation. But then you kind of get really, empathetic. The empathetic route is always a good one. I'm not here to step on toes. I'm not here to do anything other than help your business. So, with a frame of like, would it be a bad idea, Lauren, to share your runway with me? Well, no, Jonathan, it wouldn't. But I need you to sign an NDA. Okay, no worries. Or at least, no, Jonathan, not at all. This is my runway. Or Lauren, would you be opposed to sharing, how much revenue you have thus far? Well, no, I wouldn't be opposed, and I'm giving you the freedom to say no to me, but I'm also sharing a little bit more. I'm also giving you the peace of mind that you are in control and that you could say no to me, or and then when you say no, you feel pretty good about that stuff. So I kind of find that to be a pretty good tactic. Um, I'd say a bit further as far as uncovering pain points. Again, um, the need behind the need as well. This is kind of where those trusty questions I really like come in,
Mhm.
where what are the ramifications this challenge is having on the business? What's going on in the business that's driving this to be a priority now? What's your take on what's causing these issues? Why is it not clicking? And you're kind of getting them like, you're going to hate me for asking this, but like help me understand the ripple effects this has on the business. What if this stays stagnant, type of thing. Again, also great stuff from Chris Orlov. I get a lot of good stuff from him.
Great. No, I appreciate that. Totally agree on all of those different tactics, especially just whenever the buyer feels like they're in control. I think you hit on that spot on. So now we're getting to the end of the discovery call, right? And you're getting ready for those next steps. How would you tell founders as they're getting to the end of these discovery calls, how do you make those next steps without sounding too pushy or too desperate? Curious your thoughts there, because that's a tough one.
Yeah, tough one. I'd say, first and foremost, you want to come across, you're not here to, push for anything. You're here, frankly, as an authoritative voice to help their business grow and make them look like a superstar, right? So I'd say, you know, post discovery, give them a quick recap. Here's what we know. Here's what I learned. Kind of like sum up what they've shared with you. Sum up a little bit about as far as kind of like the little semblance of what you gave them about your own product and service. And before you wrap up, kind of recap what you've heard. Key challenges, key goals that's going to make them look awesome, whether this is a potential fit. And then I'll say something like, given everything we've discussed, would it be a bad idea to set up a call next Thursday at 2 p.m. to go over X, Y, and Z? And I could take 15, 20 minutes to have my solutions engineer show off the product for you. Period. Shut my mouth, right? And then they're going to open up, share a little bit more. I'd say it's really important to, you know, land that conversation at the end of the call. That's obvious, but also share a couple of times. Whereas if you kind of leave it to chance and have them run to their calendar, they're going to be scrambling, and then time's going to be up. Be pretty firm. Offer 2, 3 times, and schedule the meeting on the actually on the end of the call.
Perfect. No, I love
Those are a couple of
it.
tactics that I would share. Yeah.
That sounds great. And then Jonathan, just from, your sales experience, years of sales experience, what's your kind of approach to note taking, capturing insights? I know some people kind of don't like having the AI note takers in the room. Some people do handwritten notes. What are your kind of best goals and tactics that you've seen work so far?
Yeah, so I vehemently encourage note takers. I think you could extract incredible amounts of information super quickly, automatically. But even
Mhm.
as a follow up, um, when I circle back with that founder, or if you're selling the software, like the information that you can extract from these note takers is incredible, super quickly, right? Share a what we know slide for me based on this last conversation. So I would strongly recommend that. I'm still taking a ton of notes in complement to that. So we're on this conversation here. We have a note taker, but I still want to take down a ton of notes. Who's the champion? What's Lauren's situation? Um, what's the risk of, like, if we don't do anything? What's next steps look like? Did I bring up pricing? What packages is he or she most curious about? Um, all these things I really want to jot down, and my note taker will still capture that and summarize that for me after. But I still want to jot down the main points, right? So yeah, would highly recommend a note taker. taking a ton of notes right after the conversation. It might be a little tedious, but I definitely want to spend 15, 30 minutes writing down my chicken scratch onto into my CRM and sharing all those important pieces of tidbits. So when I circle back with Lauren, I know she has an awesome dog, what the name is, she has a wedding in Montana. These are the little things that, hey, this person didn't just look at me as somebody who he's looking to sell me, or he's looking to sell me something. It's rather he actually cares about me, pays attention to detail, cares about my world, and isn't just trying to make a buck. So right after the call, spending 15, 30 minutes or so cleaning up my notes, logging the highlights, putting together a recap email. Lauren was kind enough to share, in 30 minutes of her time with me. I want to thank her for her time, share a recap email of what we learned, putting together a what we know slide kind of right then and there. So when we speak again, hopefully within the next few days, that's pretty much outlined for me. And then share a rough scope of work if I did kind of get into the product at all. Maybe it was an hour-long conversation and I got into the product a little bit. And also an agreement too. I don't know if that's too soon. You obviously want to be sensitive to that. But at the end of these conversations as well, in the interest of setting up another conversation, also share, hey, Lauren, would it be a bad idea if I share an agreement over for your review so you have the whole picture in front of you? Otherwise, surprise, surprise, the deal will never get closed if you never send out the agreement. Now, again, that's not rocket science as well, but you do want to kind of lend a helping hand to getting these deals pushed forward. And if you never send out an agreement or a scope of work, they have nothing to kind of like internalize, nothing to kind of like mull over, and the deal won't ever get closed. And then it's a week after the fact, and then you're sending an agreement. Time is the killer of all deals, so you want to kind of get that out as fast as possible.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I know we're kind of coming up on time here. So, Jonathan, really appreciate all your insights. If you want to quickly kind of share how founders or other folks that are watching this could get in touch with you, maybe you could schedule some one-on-one time to dig into things further. If you have any closing remarks, feel free. But really enjoyed the conversation today. And thanks again for all the insights you shared.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, I'd say, above all, thankfully, mostly VC referred clients here. We come highly recommended by top VCs, including Insight Partners and Union Square Ventures and Fika Ventures. So, if you are thinking about hiring perhaps a full-time sales leader or a sales manager or your first 2, 3 AEs or your first 1, 2, 3 BDRs, we serve as a bridge, right? So now would be a great time for us to work together where, hey, team, we could bring in product market fit and kind of reinforce that product market fit, help you refine your ICP, bring in, $1 million in top of funnel, help you close a couple hundred K in ARR to help you get to that next round with the likes of Lauren and her team at Fin, or to help you get to your first million in ARR, or help you get to your $2 million in ARR. That would be a great time for us to work together. And you can find me at jonathan@withglider.com.
Awesome. Really appreciate it.